Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Are you listening?
Whoa. Excuse me? We're not.
Welcome to Behind the Stream. That's the go live signal right there. Shh, be quiet on set. We're live. Totally scripted and called for.
This is the best professional stream ever.
More professionally every day on Behind the Stream.
Oh, man.
Anyway, my name is Lewis, aka Offcast. Wait a minute, I don't ever say my handle. My name is Lewis. And
Yeah.
this is.
Me llamo Armando.
Are we doing this? Please don't mash your SAP button. This is an English stream.
Yeah, that's Armando, Lewis. Welcome back to Behind the Stream, guys. Episode number 2. Thanks for joining us. This is awesome. I'm pretty excited.
We haven't gotten canceled yet.
Not yet.
Despite everyone trying to get us canceled, we haven't gotten canceled yet.
Man, those other people just want to take our show. I don't know what it is, man. Ours is like a little tiny show, but it's okay.
So Behind the Stream is basically the show from XSplit. No, but Behind the Stream is basically where you learn everything, how to stream from both beginning to advanced, intermediate, everything in between. Armando is our support manager. I run our media and events team. Mm-hmm. So we both maybe know a little bit about streaming.
Just a little bit. We got some tips and stuff for you guys that are out there. That
maybe some tricks.
Yeah, maybe even some of that. It's a good time. It's gonna be a good time. Anyways, thanks for joining us. Thanks for following. Actually, before we get to that, make sure you follow us on Twitter at XSplit, because we might be giving away some stuff and you might be able to win something. So follow us. I have to plug us in the beginning because they ordered me to do it, but it's fun time. Anyways.
So this week's episode is pretty much going to be about XSplit 101, I guess. So this is basically the basics. We're going to take you from step 1 of using XSplit all the way up to creating like your basic presentation. I mean, you basically can use this episode to get started. Anybody new here, hopefully there's some people who have never heard about XSplit before or have never tried streaming before or even recording content. We're going to show you to do that, and by the end of this episode you can jump in and go ahead and start creating stuff on your own.
Yeah, man. So this is just a basic episode, like Lewis said. So whenever you're working with Broadcaster, just don't be afraid to jump in there and test the waters. There's so many things you can do with our product. It's pretty diverse piece of software. So even when you have an idea, just try it out. Try it in the software and see how it works out. And some people find some really cool stuff to do with our software. So experimentation is always a great thing to do.
And then at the end of the episode, we'll go ahead and take some questions from social media, from Twitter. We'll check the chats. As you know, we're streaming on Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, Facebook, and even Periscope. So we'll try our best to take some of the questions. So if you guys have questions in chat, if it's relevant to maybe what we're talking about, we'll try and answer it. But if not, we'll make sure to try and catch up on some questions at the end. But going into that, I guess if we can go ahead and switch over to starting on how to use XSplit, right?
Yeah, let's teach them the basics.
The basics.
Episode 2, baby.
So, so the first thing that you're gonna want to do is,
you're fired, man. You did that so.
So the first thing we're gonna want to show you is to use XSplit, you need an XSplit account. So you're gonna want to go to xsplit.com. We actually have this pulled up right here. Pretty simple. I mean, all you gotta do is, in fact, you can just download the software right away.
Yep.
But definitely you want to create an XSplit account. Just register it here. You don't have to do this on the website, but you do need to go to the website to download it. In fact, you can download it. You can actually register for the account as soon as you download it. So just a little bit of things we want to talk about here is our license tiers, right? So you can use XSplit for free. And I think for most people, when they're first starting out, everything that's in XSplit free version or free license is pretty much all you need to get started.
Yeah.
So basically with XSplit free, you get 4 scenes, and you get to stream up to 720p at 30 FPS, which is pretty much an HD stream. So that's really all you need to do to get started. Of course, you can get a personal license and a premium license. Personal license pretty much unlocks most of the features.
Yes, sir.
You can start streaming it up to 4K, whatever resolution you want. And when you get a premium license, that pretty much offers some of the high-end professional features like projector mode and stuff we won't really cover in this episode, but we'll cover a bit later.
Yeah.
And you know, the best thing is if you're going to be monetizing your content, then the premium license is a license for you.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything. Damn, you're making my job easier. Thanks,
So, jumping into the first thing, which is we're going to talk about scenes and presentations. I'm going to let Mondo take over this topic real quick.
Why me?
Because I'm a driver. I'm driving the truck. You know, I'm going, you know, choo choo on the window here.
I don't like other people choo choo. I didn't. Yeah.
You're missing all my vigorous hand motions right here.
It just comes out of nowhere, folks. I don't know. But yeah. So first and foremost, when you open up XSplit, you're greeted with the mixer. In the mixer in here, where you see it says "New to XSplit Broadcaster," this is where you make all of your adjustments. And is basically where you start layering all your stuff, right? So your presentation is basically a collection of everything that you have in XSplit. When you're going to produce a show, say you want to show a video on one of the scenes, say you want to get a zoom in of your face in another scene for a reaction, it's basically what the presentation is. It's like a PowerPoint, same concept, right? So you make a PowerPoint, you present it to the people, it has everything that you need in the slides. Same kind of concept here. And then you also have your scenes, which we're going to get into here as well. And then this guy's just opening windows from, hey man, we don't want to, get, those strikes and stuff, right? Just be careful what you do with Chrome, man. So down at the bottom right, you have scenes. So in the scenes, what you basically do is when you have one scene, you structure it, you're going to layer it. Say if you want to put your game content, you can add your game content. So we go to add. Can we try just
Let me get a game running first here.
Foiled, one of the best games ever made. So we go to add, game capture, and then foiled. It's pretty much that easy. You stretch it out, and then that'll be your first scene. You can position it wherever you like. You can make it small, big, give it 3D rotation. There you go. And snap to grid is another.
So pro tip right there. To do that, you just hold down the shift key.
The shift key, yes. And another little tip that we don't really tell you about. So if you have you add a source that's that small of a window, you can just hover over it with your mouse and then click the 1 through 1 through 8 keys.
Yeah, so 1 is 100% and 2 is like 50% and so on and so forth.
So it's a quick way to stretch it out to full screen. So that's basically the idea of your scenes, right? So say scene 1 can just be the gameplay, and then scene 2 could be the gameplay plus a webcam, and then you can also rename the scene as well. So when you're producing content and you have a show, you can have it structured so when you look at the buttons, even though you may know where the button is, you can visually see it and tell you and remind yourself, okay, this is my face cam, this is my gameplay scene. So we allow you to customize or rename rather the scenes in your presentation.
Yeah, and so you can see here that as I'm switching between scenes, there's like this slight fade right here. So this is known as scene transitions, and the way you can select these is in this drop-down menu right here. Let me go ahead and make the window size just a little bit bigger. But yeah, so you can change here. We have a bunch of preloaded sources or preloaded scene transitions, right? So let's have a nice little wave effect.
Ooh.
And you can even set a duration for it, right? So maybe you want it like a really long time. So that's about 2 seconds right there. You can have a nice long transition. And even as a way to maybe add a bunch of different transitions really quickly, you have this button here to set a favorite transition. So you can click that, and then maybe I want a clock and I want to save that. And when you right click on a scene, then you can access these transitions pretty quickly.
Yep. It's pretty useful when you have it all for your disposal in the right click. You can easily access whatever transition you want and then just initiate it right away. So it's a very, very useful tool. We actually use it quite often.
So when you've made like a few different scenes, and we'll go more in depth as we go on about what you can add to scenes and sources like that, but let's say you've got a few different scenes like we have here. Now you can save them as a presentation, right? So let's say, you know, test run, right? Oops, learn how to spell. So we save that. This makes it an easy way for you to create a lot of different presentations and load and switch between them. And actually a cool pro tip that most people don't know is that you can load presentations at any point in time. So like, let's say you're recording or let's say you're streaming, you can load presentations because maybe you're in the middle of a show and you got to switch to another one, but you don't want to go offline or stop the recording. It's a pretty cool trick that you can use for that.
Then here's another little pro tip to add to that pro tip. Whenever you're going to load a presentation during a presentation, you want the next presentation to start where your first one ends. So say if I have we're going to break presentation at the very end of the first cast and you want to go into another one, say you're broadcasting big tournament for a league or something, the next presentation should start off with the same sources that are in the scene of the first one, so when you load it, it'll just seamlessly go, it'll look like nothing happens, and then you'll have a complete whole new set of scenes in your presentation.
And then, so something here for the premium users, right, is you see this plus button here. This basically allows you to add more scenes. And the cool thing that we've added recently, I believe it was about 2.8, 2.9, is we have infinite scenes. So previously you had about 12 scenes limit, but now you can pretty much add as many scenes as you want.
Infinite. You can do as many scenes as you want here. It's pretty ridiculous, the amount of stuff that you can do now.
So now that we've talked a little bit about scenes and presentations and what you can do with them, I guess the building blocks or the foundation of pretty much any scene is the sources, right? So sources are things like webcams or games that we showed you, text sources, and we'll run through those in a bit here. But these things can be layered on top of each other, sort of similar to what you would think in Photoshop or any type of image editing tool. But since we already have a gameplay source here, one cool thing that most people don't know what you can do is you can actually label the sources. So if you just kind of click on it, like if you're renaming a file on Windows, you can be like, this is my game. So this is pretty useful for, let's say you have multiple webcams. You can say, hey, this is the camera on the commentators. Hey, this is the camera on the crowd and stuff like that. It's pretty cool when you have multiples of the same thing. And I guess next, maybe we can explain a little bit about how you add a web camera to our presentation.
Yeah, adding a web camera, basically adding any web source is pretty easy. You're always going to want to go to the add button under your presentations where your scene is at, and you're going to go up to devices, and then it'll have webcam, capture cards, and then you're greeted by two menus. One is video and one is audio. So most of the time what you want to do here is work with the video source so you don't get audio from the device you're pulling into your mixer. And again, the mixer is basically your canvas that you're working on, because you're essentially what you're doing is mixing everything. It's like one of those audio consoles. You have all these audio sources going into it, and you're mixing it, and your final presentation is that's your result that you're getting. So here, most people, what they're going to want to do is just go to video and then add the device. In this case, it's going to be the webcam. And then another thing Streamception. Another thing you can do by using just the audio source is you can set it where certain scenes will trigger that specific audio file or audio device that you selected. So say if you have like music or your phone playing some audio, some fat beats that you just made, and you plug it into your computer and you want that to trigger when you go to like the be right back screen or something, like I gotta go make some popcorn in the microwave or whatever. When you switch over to that scene, just using the audio source and bringing that line in to there, it'll activate it there. That way you don't have to add it in a scene with something else and kind of clutter it up. So it keeps it a little bit cleaner for you guys.
So the cool thing about different sources is basically they all have slightly different properties in this thing that we call the source menu here. So usually this first tab is pretty unique to each source. So for example, here we have, we can set an audio device for the webcam. We can configure settings manually, like maybe we can make it 1080p instead of 720p and change different stuff like that. But also this gives us access to probably one of the more useful features, at least for webcams, is the chroma key feature. So it's gonna look a little janky right now, but once I activate that, look, we're in the game.
Ooh, look at that. This is not really here. It's somewhere out there.
And we can look sickly. It's disturbing. We look like Oompa Loompas.
Can I go now? Can I at least make me green, man? I want to be the Hulk if I'm, it's. Jeez.
All right, hold on. Let me see what color.
But you get a lot of options here in the source options menu, right? So you can basically manipulate your source in various different ways, whether it's color, whether it's cropping it, masking it, which is stuff that we can talk about later in the more detailed, advanced episode. But there's so many things you can do in here just for the configuration of the source that you're bringing in. It allows a lot of diversity with what you're working, so it's pretty awesome.
Okay.
Yay, back to normal. All right.
So aside from that, in this menu is also populated by any capture devices that you send. So if we had like a capture card hooked up, for capturing your gameplay or your console, any of the Elgatos, Aeromedias, Magewell, all those devices would appear here. And some of them require some configuration. You might have to set what type of input you're sending, if it's HDMI or stuff like that. We're actually in the future going to cover specifically capture cards.
Yes.
So you'll get to find out all the intricacies from each different brand and maker and kind of how to optimize each one in the future.
Yeah, it gets pretty extensive because some of them require very specific configurations, like Lewis had mentioned. So some of them, if you're outputting a source into your capture card that is a certain dimension, you have to match it. And so some of them can be a little bit tricky. Usually it's the more advanced stuff that covers more options in terms of capturing. But it'll be a lot more extensive coverage when we get to that episode, and you guys will be able to dive down to capture cards a lot more with you guys when we get to there.
So one more way to capture stuff, and basically this is another way if you're maybe playing like a web game or something like that, is those don't work with our game source. So our game source mainly works with DirectX 9 and 11, and I think we just started supporting 12. And also it works with OpenGL, but there's maybe you want to play Christopher Robin's baseball. Was it the Winnie the Pooh baseball game? Anyway, so you want to use screen capture for that.
Yes.
So screen capture can capture like a whole desktop, like you can see right here, or we can capture specifically a window. And I know why that happened because I need to turn off hardware encoding, but let's use another example here. So let's go ahead and capture this.
Nice code, bro.
And there's your notepad capture. So yeah, screen captures can be used to capture your games, your web, your flash games. It can be used to just capture your desktop. I know some games actually have anti-cheat measures built into them so that you're not able to capture them at all, so it'll kick you out of the game. Yeah. So using this desktop capture is a good way to kind of work around that.
Yeah. So even using, like, if you want to say just to use a primitive way to putting text in your presentation, in your scene actually, is like right now Lewis has the notepad open and he typed a few words. You can actually chroma key the white out so it only just leaves the text that's in there. So yeah, it's, like I said, pretty diverse piece of software. A lot of things that you can manipulate when you import it into your scenes. So
yeah, and like I said, things here get layered. You can use this menu here to adjust the layers of each source to cover or go below or in between each other. Like now we're kind of in the now we have the notes behind us. So yeah, you can be pretty creative using chroma key and layering sources and positioning them with each other. And we actually have a cool feature that most people don't know about. It's this snap to grid, so you can have the sources kind of line up and center them with each other and stuff like that.
You get a sick ruler, bro. That way you don't overlap.
So a final source that's probably useful to a lot of people, and you got a preview of it before the show went live, is the text source. So this text source is pretty fun to play with. Put whatever, we can make it scroll.
Change the color, you can change the font, you can make it bold, strike it through, change the alignment.
And you can even do cool stuff with these custom scripts. Now I'm not going to go into them too deeply, but for example, you can add a clock, Now you have a clock that's scrolling.
So once you get pretty advanced with the text source, you can actually start using, say if you wanted to use an external program to manipulate the text, you can do that too. You can set it to a text file and then do all your name changes and stuff like that to the text within the notepad, and then XSplit will automatically grab that data from there once you configure it properly, and it'll just update it right away. So text source is it's pretty nifty, and that's kind of an understatement because there's so much you can do with this. It interfaces with so many things, and there's just a lot that you can do, but that's for another episode because it's going to take quite a bit of time to explain to you exactly how deep just that source can actually go. Whoa, did I just say that? That was terrible. I'm sorry. Cover your ears. But yeah, it's pretty diverse.
Source code.
I like it. We used to use it a lot when we would run a lot of fighting game tournaments, and we have to update player names, player scores, stuff like that. We would set it so when we create the overlay, back when we didn't really write code, we would make the overlay. We would have the sick graphic. And then we would put the text on top of the graphic, right? And then we would change it in a notepad, and it would upload it into XSplit, and XSplit would change it on the fly. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with it.
So one last thing I want to talk about here is one of the most important parts about the mixer is the resolution and frame rate that you set it to. So you can see in this top section here, if you put down this drop down menu, there's this section called resolution. So right now we have it set to full HD. You can set it to different resolutions, and basically this base resolution is what's going to be your local recording resolution, and it can also be your stream resolution, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the most important thing to consider about this is that the higher you set this, the more CPU you're going to need, more
memory, more CPU, more bandwidth.
Now, for most people, I would say 720p kind of works well universally. You don't need to set it at such a high bit rate when you stream. And the thing is, if you go 1080, of course you need more bit rate to get a better image quality. But at the same time, that means that the people watching it are going to need to.
They're going to need the same amount of bandwidth to actually download the stream and be able to watch it. So you have to be careful when you're starting out. If you're not, say, if you don't have partnership on Twitch, right, and you're trying to stream a 1080p 60 frames with like a 5 megabit upload, most people aren't going to be able to watch it, and since you don't have quality options, maybe you're not partner yet, they can't downscale it, right? So they can't pick like 360p source. So if you're starting out, we suggest 720p 30 frames, about megabit and a half upload. Most people can actually download that information from a server like Twitch, and they'll be able to view it at the intended resolution that you're streaming. So be very careful with that.
So, going hand in hand, Mono mentioned that too, is frame rate. So down in this section, you can set the frame rate. Generally, the frame rate is going to be either 30 FPS or 60 FPS. Now, XSplit can go as high as, I think, 240 FPS, but a lot of capture cards and games don't really support that. But maybe you want to do some cool slow-mo recording if you have something that can. But yeah, right now we have it set to 60. Of course, I really recommend starting off with 30. But yeah, if you have the bandwidth, if you have the machine that can handle it, go for it. 60.
Yeah, man. A lot of options.
So on that note, we have to pay some bills. But so with Behind the Stream, we actually have a pretty cool promo going right now. While the show is live.
I wasn't told about this. What promo?
Yeah, while the show is live, we'll go ahead and bring it up here. We actually have a pretty cool discount code. So if you use Behind the Stream 0810, yeah. If you use that code on the buy page, so if you go to xsplit.com/buy.
I hate to point the obvious, but wasn't that yesterday's date? Or yesterday, I get it. I'm a little slow there, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Use Behind the Stream 0810, and what do they get?
So you get 15% off your XSplit license purchase, and basically you're gonna take that code, and then you're gonna just paste it on the discount code section on xsplit.com/buy. Click apply onto it, and you'll get 15% off. So that applies to every kind of license. That's lifetime licenses, which we actually have a sale going on for. That is premium licenses, 3 months 1 year, 3 years, it all gets a sale on it.
Man, they're saving some good amount of money.
But yeah, make sure that you use that as soon as you can, because it's not active for very long. It's just active.
No, just after the show for a few minutes. So you gotta act fast, man. Also, you guys should be following us on our socials, man. XSplit everything. So Twitter, Facebook. Where are we at? Are we on Instagram? Do we have an Instagram? No.
Yeah, we have an Instagram.
Okay, we have an Instagram. MySpace, AOL Instant Messenger. No. ICQ.
No ICQ.
Damn. Follow us on Twitter. You might win something, man. Go ahead. I'll let you go first.
So yeah, the next topic we're going to talk about here is the audio setup in XSplit.
Behind the Stream 0810.
Oh man, I'm gonna butcher that one so much. So I guess I skipped a couple steps there, but right here you have your audio panel for XSplit. Mm-hmm. You have a microphone symbol, speaker symbol. Now,
wait, Lewis, one moment, please. Before we get to this portion that's on another side, I would actually like to show some of the people here our new split feature real quick, if we could.
Oh,
can we show them the split feature? I think that
I feel like there's a little bit advanced, but we can show them this.
It's an amazing feature for you content providers or people that go out and actually produce larger scale events. This is actually a really good feature for you guys that got implemented into XSplit now. And basically what it does, it kind of gives you a preview without having a second window, and you have everything in one mixer, right? So it shows you everything. So when you go to workspace, up on the top right, you're going to click the down arrow, go to workspace, and you're going to go over to split mode. And so basically what this does is on your left hand side is where you're going to do all your edits, right? So you're going to see underneath at the bottom it says preview and it says scene. So if you have something that's already live, you can go and then enter a new scene, put another webcam in there, another game, something on the fly that you need to adjust. So say a player just wins a match, a crazy match, and you just happen to have this video that you want to put in there. You can quickly screen capture it, put it in the scene while you're previewing it and people can't see it, and then you can go to push to live, and that pushes it out to your live stream. So it's actually a really great feature, really awesome thing to be having, that we have now in XSplit. So hopefully you guys will make it'll help you guys out in your production. So I think it's amazing. I love this.
So going back to classic mode.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to recap really quick. So basically a presentation is a collection of scenes. Scenes are collections of sources. So here we showed you how to put together sources. We made a couple scenes, some text, some webcam, and gameplay. So now what we want to do is show you how to set up your audio. So of course you see these audio controls here, microphone symbol and a speaker symbol, but you're going to question, okay, well, I mean, of course this can go up and down, volume up and down, and mute, unmute, but what are these devices? What is my microphone? What is my speaker symbol? So if you click on this gear symbol right next to these two icons, you go immediately into the audio settings, right? Now there's another route to take this. It's a bit longer, but you can go to tools, settings, and click on the audio tab. Now you'll see a lot of options here. We're really just going to cover the basics right here, but the first is system sound. So system sound is basically known in Windows as playback devices. So any devices like a headset or a monitor that has speakers or anything is considered a system sound device. So right here we have this set as our system sound device, and for the most part, you just want to leave this as default, right? The reason why you want to leave this as default is if you're capturing gameplay, gameplay only comes through default sound. You can't change what speaker playback device it comes out of.
Move that, they can't see your face, man.
And I mean, it's fine, I don't need to. So basically, default speakers, just kind of leave it to that. That keeps it very simple. You don't have to think about what device do I need to set it to or what device is active. Just know that it's the default speakers. Microphone device you can play around with. Like some of you might have microphones in your webcam, some might have a headset connected, but maybe you want just the microphone from the webcam to be active or just your headset. It can differ, so you can stick with default like that, but sometimes you might want to actually select this.
Yeah. So now sometimes actually when you go into the microphone, what winds up happening with pretty much all the current motherboards that are out there on your PC is it won't detect a microphone port or a line in port unless you physically plug in something in there. So it's just a little something to be aware of when you go into the microphone drop down. Maybe your playback device or your microphone port or your line in won't be there because you have nothing plugged into it. So it's important that if you want to select it from there, that your device is connected.
Yeah, and also kind of going back, that a microphone device is known in Windows as a recording device. So whatever is in your recording device menu here, that's going to be listed in XSplit. An important thing about microphones though is sometimes you might notice double microphone audio. The reason why this commonly occurs is you've probably enabled listen to this device. So you want to definitely have this disabled if you're going to set a device as a microphone in XSplit. Now, just as a basic thing, maybe you have a quiet mic or a mic that's pretty low, you can use this to actually boost the volume range. Or you can do the same thing with system sound. I'm not going to go into delay too much. This is something that's actually maybe for more advanced or specific use cases.
Slightly advanced people, but also you can use the volume range. Say if you have a budget microphone, you can set it. I think the range goes all the way up to 300. And when you set let's say like the microphone volume range, you go ahead and set it to like 300. It'll give you an indicator too, so once you apply it and click OK, it changes it on the display at the bottom. So if you actually hit OK and you raise it, it'll change colors to let you know, to give you an indication that you're amplifying the sound. So it can be a good thing, or and it can be a bad thing too, because if you have a microphone that's not that great and you try to give it a boost, you'll pick up a lot of background noise. So you'll have to fiddle around with it depending on what kind of microphone that you're using. It takes some experimentation, but the option is there for you. If you right click it, it'll actually set it to default, by the way.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how you set up your microphone devices. In the future, we'll talk about things like silence detection and mixes and stuff like that. But generally speaking, set it to default speakers and then select your microphone. If your microphone's a bit soft or weak, then go ahead and boost the volume range, and then you can tweak those even further right here.
Yep.
And next, so now we have our scene set up and we have our audio set up. Let's set up a stream, right?
All right, cool. Do we have a channel? Is it hidden? Please tell me it's hidden.
So I actually have to remove it real quick. So basically, whatever you broadcast to, if it's Twitch, if it's Facebook, if it's YouTube or wherever, you're gonna set up a output. So by default, you have local recording as an output. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But to set up a new output that you're actually going to broadcast to, you're going to go to setup new output. And there's some things that are here by default. But let's say that your service isn't actually available here. Just click on Get More Outputs, and you'll be taken to our plugin store.
You will.
You will.
In the future.
It will happen.
It's loading. Give it time. This computer has very slow internet. We're using Net Zero, I believe.
I'm running out of disks too. So yeah, right here you have the list of services that we have plugins to. And now if you don't see a service here listed that you can just use custom RTMP. Yeah. So when you use custom RTMP, you need the RTMP URL and the stream key, so it's a bit complicated. So we've streamlined these, so basically you just need to log into your account for the most part and you can broadcast. It's
easy mode, so that's why we have those plugins there to make the process for you connecting XSplit to your account that much more simpler. So just because the service isn't there, like Lewis said, there's different ways to get around that. If we don't have a plugin, you can still do it, right? As long as you have like a stream key, the ingest server, and a name, you're pretty much good to go on most platforms. But yeah, plugins, easy mode.
We make things more simpler and more professionally.
Yeah, more professionally.
So we're gonna set up a Twitch channel here. Now, like I said, we're just gonna need to log into our Twitch channel.
Oh man.
Let's hope this goes okay.
Producer, can you like blur that out?
This is my awesome Twitch channel. Follow
Everybody's
me on Best Day Ever.
everybody's
94.
gonna try to not be a robot.
So this is where I fail most of the times. What are the street signs?
Didn't you play this game in the arcades? When the fighting games were full and everybody was on the cabs, you'd go play that touchscreen game, like find the error in the thing. You should be good at this.
So now that we've authorized our account, we actually have a pretty cool tool built into our broadcast plugins, which is the wizard, which basically does all the work for you. This is gonna look at your PC specs, it's gonna test your internet connection to the different Twitch servers, and it's gonna determine what's the best resolution and what's the best frame rate for you to broadcast at. So we're gonna go ahead and let that go to work right here.
Oh man, net zero, here we go. We could have had some baller stuff like AOL, but those discs, they're buried somewhere in the Nevada desert. All right, here we go. What? Hong Kong? What? Oh, that's right.
Oh,
we're
we're giving away our locations, huh?
We're somewhere around in that general vicinity.
I hope our producer can show how impressive it is once this wizard is finished. How this is such an impressive feature, and he can reflect his emotion about how cool this is.
Wow. At least he used it properly that time.
Okay, so now we're here at the end. It shows that we have the required upload and the computer components or hardware to stream at 720p. It's a recommended setting. So if you're new to streaming and you don't know about bitrate or resolution or frame rate, you just use this wizard and it'll do all the work for you. So we're just going to click finish. It's going to change our FPS to 30 and our resolution to 720p. And we've even streamlined selecting your servers. So this will choose the servers automatically, or you can take a look. You basically want to choose what has the lowest ping and jitter. And as you can see, bitrate and audio encoding are already set. Now, just to generally speak it and hopefully not go crazy for the users, the rule of thumb is the higher the bitrate, the better the image quality, but you need the upload bandwidth to support it, and you need to take into account your viewers' upload bandwidth. So yeah, you can give it 10,000 bitrate, it's gonna look amazing, but like 5 people are gonna be able to watch it.
Like 2. And they're all working in some fiber office.
So I actually want to address a question to the chat right here. So it says, Michael Fight says, if I update components on my PC, should I rerun this wizard? Now this depends, right? So the thing about this wizard is that it's basically designed to give you the most stable setting possible. So like we said, the general rule of thumb setting is 720p 30 fps. So if you have amazing connection and server grade computer components and SLI titans and everything, then this thing is still going to give you 720p 30. At that point, if you have like an awesome CPU, awesome GPU, you can kind of start experimenting and set 1080p 60 fps and higher bit rates and stuff like that.
So usually when you stream at 720p 30 frames per second, it actually winds up looking a lot better because it doesn't have to encode as many frames. So once you bump it to 60, it needs to encode 30 more frames on top of the first 30 to give it that smoothness, right? And that takes up more, CPU resources and more bandwidth resources as well. So for the most part, when people start off, they always start off with the 720p stream at 30 frames, and it looks really crisp, really nice, really detailed. So once you start bumping it up to something like 60 frames per second, then you're gonna require more bandwidth, you're gonna require more CPU usage as well. So it's one of the things that you wanna keep in mind as well. Does it all?
So yeah, again, addressing Frog Dude in the chat, does it set your bitrate based on your connection? So yeah, what this is going to be is it's going to be on more the conservative side, right? So if you know that you can handle a connection of 2500 to 4000 for 720p 30 fps, then by all means set it that high. What this is going to do, it's not meant to set the perfect thing for every situation. It's meant to set what's the most stable setting for a lot of situations. But aside from that, the last thing I want to mention in this plugin here is that the stream delay feature. So if you're playing like pretty much an esports game like Hearthstone, and you don't want someone stream sniping or watching your stream and reading your hand and beating you, you can set the stream delay and set 60 seconds or something like that. I'm gonna leave it off for now, but after all is said and done, you can run the wizard and you can tweak stuff after that, play with it. But once you're done, just click OK, and now you have the output set.
Yeah.
And to go live, we go back and we click on the output. So what this is going to do is take a look at the servers and determine the best one, and then it's going to go live. Of course, if you set the server manually, it won't do this. It'll just go live immediately. So once we go live, this might be a bit hard to see for you guys here. Maybe we can full screen this.
We can zoom in on it. It's built-in technology. Our producer should be very aware of this.
More professionally.
Oh man, you're making us look bad, dude. Damn.
Anyway, so this is a bit hard to see right here, but basically this is your stream encoding stats. Now what this is going to tell you.
There you go. See, now you're cooking.
This is going to tell you what.
A little bit more. Sorry.
This is going to tell you what bit rate you're running at, your frames encoded, your frames dropped. Now, most of this information isn't that important except for the drops. If you start seeing frames get dropped, or if you start seeing your frames encoded count like reset, that means if the frames encoded reset, that means your stream just died and just restarted. If the drop is going way too high, that means your bit rate is too high and you need to decrease it. So let's say you're seeing some frame drops, right?
Oh yes.
What you can do is, instead of going offline, resetting it and going back in, you go back to your outputs menu and you right click on your output, and there you can adjust the bitrate settings.
Or you can click on the gear icon.
Yes, either or. But yeah, you can say, hey, I want to drop this a bit, and you can see if your stream stabilizes.
So most people actually don't know or aren't aware that you have that feature once you go live. So it's pretty important, like when you're already in production or you're streaming, you're casting for your day, and you start running into all these frame drops, don't hesitate to go in there into the output, into the configuration, and lower the bit rate and see if it smooths out, right? So a lot of times it'll just be like a little hiccup here in some part of the network connection, not necessarily that it's your connection at home, but maybe something in the server from your provider. So it's always good to go in there, just lower it and see if it actually helps out. So if it starts helping out, then you're okay. There's just something wrong with the network, and then after a couple minutes you can set it back up to what you previously had it before, and keep trucking along.
So one last thing I want to mention about streaming is, so by default we have an option where when you go live on a stream, the link is actually pasted into your clipboard. So I just did that here. Now most of you are going to probably want to go watch your stream and make sure it's doing okay. Now this is really important. If you're going to go check out your stream, make sure you mute it, because this will cause an echo loop and you'll just be pulling your hair out. So yeah, generally emojis. Generally make sure just always mute your stream if you're going to be previewing it.
Are we getting paid for that?
I don't know. Did we get CPM for emojis? No, we don't have. This isn't a partnered account, so. Anyway, but yeah, that's pretty much it with streaming. Again, if you want to go offline, just click it again and you're offline. Having said that, I think it's time again to tell the people how they can get XSplit.
Oh man,
I think it's your turn, Ron.
You can go to www.xsplit.com right now, and you can head on over there, go to your licenses, and use behind the stream 0810 to take how much, Lewis? How much are they getting off?
Not 5%.
Not 5.
Not 10%.
Not 10.
But we get 15%.
15. Oh my God. If I was you guys, wow. Exactly. That guy just got it. He nailed it right there. Head on over to xsplit.com, redeem your code, and start broadcasting.
Behind the stream 0810, 15% off.
15.
Do it right now. It's only active while this show is live.
Not 5. Not 10. 15. Whoop! While we're live, so act fast. Yeah.
So, our next topic is going to be recording. So maybe you don't have the capability to stream. Maybe you just want to record stuff to put on YouTube. We have local recording, which is also in the output section, right? Now, before we start a local recording, I just want to go over a little bit about the settings, because there's some considerations that you can take into local recording that you might not with live streaming. So one thing is codec. So there was a codec option available in streaming, but basically the rule of thumb is use X264. The reason for that is because X264 requires less bit rate to create a better image quality, right? Whereas with recording, you're not limited by bitrate. So you can use these things called hardware encoders. So if you have like a GPU that's fairly new from AMD or a newer or NVIDIA, or if you have a CPU that's pretty new from Intel, they'll have these things called hardware encoders. So NVIDIA has this NVENC, which you can see here. AMD has VCE, and Intel has QuickSync, and even AverMedia has their own encoder built into the LiveGamer HD. So the cool thing about these is if you use these, it'll use your GPU or these hardware encoders to encode and won't use your CPU. So that way this won't affect your gaming as much, or it just basically removes some of the stress off the CPU. But what's cool is if you use these hardware encoders, that means that you can stream with your CPU on x264, then you can use your GPU or hardware encoder to do the recordings so that your computer doesn't explode.
It's a good way to experiment. So depending on the system that you have, say if you first start out streaming and then you also want to record your content as well, or say while you're playing like say PUBG or something and you're with your crew and you think you're getting to the final circle and you want to start recording right away, if you set this to like the NVIDIA encoder to do the recording for you, it'll take off the stress from your CPU and vice versa, right? And then you can get a really good looking video once you're done with the recording. So yeah, basically you want to do a little bit of experimenting depending on how you're running your stream, but those options are available there. So even if you have like a i3 something with a sick 1080 Ti, you'll be able to make really good videos just off of the NVIDIA encoder.
So the thing here I'll just go through quickly is quality. So basically, the higher the quality, the bigger the file size. Now, I do want to say, if you're using the hardware encoders, since they're using such higher bit rate, that means the file sizes get really big, really fast. Like I think after maybe 10 minutes, you're almost hitting a gig, right?
Yeah.
So when you're using these hardware encoders, make sure you're loading them onto maybe a secondary drive that's like a terabyte or something like that. Which
you can always go into the recording and set it to a secondary drive, because most people want to play on solid state. They have their primary OS and some of their games on SSD, and then they have like a 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte disk where they save all their stuff. You can actually go into the recording and then change the directory so it records to a disk that's not in use by your game.
So some other cool features here for local recording are, of course, you can set the bit rate for the audio as well. But this feature right here, most people I think don't know, but you can actually set your recording to split files, right? So let's say you're recording a Let's Play, and most Let's Plays maybe go 10 to 20 minutes, but you're actually playing for an hour or more, right? And you don't want to have to start and stop XSplit every time. So this can actually set it to cut, like, let's say we wanted to restart a recording every 10 minutes. Pretty useful for a lot of Let's Players out there. Another useful feature is force constant frame rate.
So well, just slightly going back to that topic about cutting the recording, it's very useful when you're, like Lewis mentioned, creating a Let's Play, and the Let's Play is going like, because most of the time they're not 20 minutes, they're not an hour, they're like 4, 5, 6 hours, right? And you don't want to have one massive file later on that's too big for your system to pull into something like a video editor where it can't support it. Like the file will be way too big, you can't load it into the memory, or you run out of memory and you can't edit it at all. And it's just going to be a really hard workaround. So this is a good way for you to put a limitation as to how big the file size can be or how long it can be, and then come back and then load it into your editor and be able to manipulate whatever you want and then publish the final product. So it's a very good tool to use. A lot of people will record and they'll forget about stopping the recording. So this is a really good option for those people that are going to be streaming on on Twitch or YouTube for like 3 hours or 4 hours, where if you time your show properly, where like every hour you go on break, this will essentially stop the recording every hour for you, and then once you come back it'll start a new one. So it's pretty easy mode, and it prevents you from having like editing headaches later on in the future.
So on that note about using editors and stuff like that, so if you're going to put these recordings into like a third-party software, you always should use this force constant frame rate option. Basically just have it on all the time, and this will give you a smoother experience of when you're importing these MP4 files into different editing software. Last but not least is optimized for YouTube. So without getting too technical for this, there's a certain format that YouTube videos are supposed to be in so they can upload quicker. So what this does is basically changes something about the file container of MP4 so that if you just want to upload the recording directly from XSplit into YouTube, it's recommended to have this active, and it'll upload a lot quicker, process a lot quicker, and then your video will be available a lot quicker. Quicker.
Be more professional, kids.
More professional. So yeah, just click OK once your settings are good. Just gonna disable this real quick, and go back to outputs. Click local recording, and the same as with streaming, you'll see that there's stats. Generally, there isn't drops or errors.
Not on recording unless you got a bad hard drive.
Yeah.
Either that or you're trying to do too many crazy things at one time, and then you're just maxing out everything.
So the question comes up, hey, can I stream and record at the same time? Yeah, you can. So you basically go back to outputs, you click on the stream, and we're gonna go ahead and let this detect the target server. And you'll start streaming, and there you can see that the menu switches between the recording stats and the live streaming stats.
So you can always use a couple of factors here to kind of, when you run into any particular issue, to try to kind of troubleshoot when it's something regarding streaming, like say you're dropping frames, etc. When you have the status bar up there, you can not only see how much bandwidth you're pushing or how many frames you're dropping, but at the bottom we also have a status bar that gives you the frames per second that you're pushing out, your processor percentage, and as well as your video card and your memory usage. So you can always kind of more or less just look at everything as a whole and try to figure out where the issue is. If not, you can always drop me a line and go to support.xsplit.com/support.
Battlegrounds on player.me.
Yeah, you can do that too.
So one thing real quick about recordings. So you probably heard us mention that you can record on secondary drives, but you're probably like, well, how do I set that up? So go down to tools, go to recordings. This will open your recordings manager. And what you do is you just click on these three dots right here, and you can select whatever location you want it to be at.
Just navigate somewhere.
And also with the recordings, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you can actually edit them and quickly clip the recordings, chop them up really fast.
Yeah, just here's a quick little side note for those of you that want to start the recording and then editing them. Like I mentioned before, you want to be cautious about your file size, because there is also a limit in the editor as to how big the file you can import in our editor and then dissect and put together. So I think the file limit is 10 gigs if I'm not mistaken. It's 10 gigs. So you don't really want to go higher than that, because then you require like the super NASA space computer that has like a jillion gigs of memory and all that stuff to do it.
Yeah, there is a limit on our editor of files, about 10 gigs. So yeah, that really covers it. Now you know how to set up a presentation, set up scenes, set up sources within those scenes, switch between them, transition between them, how to set up a stream, how to set up your audio, and how to set up recordings. So I guess it's our funnest part of the show, which is answering some questions. So one question I saw...
Oh yeah, yes, it is.
One question I saw earlier was, can you make the source menu larger? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, you can't. It's pretty much locked to a certain size. It's really as big as you've made the XSplit window.
Yeah. Not yet. Maybe in the future. Who knows?
And I guess if we can go to some of our Twitter questions. If you guys want, you can tweet at XSplit. You can use hashtag.
Man, this guy again?
He's our #1 fan.
He's your #1 fan. He never sends me any nice tweets or anything. Even though I roomed with him.
So Rankinami asked, what's the best CPU preset with a 77K while going on the same machine as... okay, so basically he's gaming on the same machine as he's streaming.
Yeah.
A 77K, I mean, how many cores is that?
That's more advanced. Why is he here? He's messing up the rotation, man. This is a beginner's intro guide, not an intermediate to advanced guide. Shame on you, man.
So what he's generally asking about is if you go into your output properties, so I guess just go to outputs, click on the gear symbol or right click on it. If you click on this gear here, you have these encoder presets, right?
Yes.
Now, generally, stick to very fast. You know, that looks pretty good, and it doesn't really eat up your CPU. But if you have a monster machine, right, you can start using the slower presets.
Yep.
Now, I would say if you're gaming and streaming on it, I wouldn't go below faster. You can try fast, but I think faster or very fast is going to be fine.
In reality, this is all experimentation, right? So by default, we're already giving you basically the most optimal settings for your machine when you start it up. You use the wizard and you connect it to your account. So once you start learning more about the software, this is where you can come in and experiment a little bit more with the encoders, with the audio. And so when you click on the gear and go back into the option for the encoder, this is where you're going to want to come and do maybe a couple test streams to see how your machine holds up to what you're doing, the bit rate that you're streaming at, and then how your preset for your encoder is. So you're just going to want to test it out at that point. So you can have a really baller machine and be able to run everything in the world, but if you have too many things open at the same time, that's obviously going to affect XSplit as well. So you want to try to keep a lot of third-party apps to a minimum when you're streaming something, because those add to your CPU usage overall as well. So this portion right here, you're going to want to do some experimentation on it as well.
So I saw a question from Michael Fight. Is there ever plans to have a live audio mixer so I can map all incoming sounds individually to control while live? Yes, there are plans to have some multi-track audio options. I can't say exactly what version they're released, but I know this has been a feature that our users have asked for a long time. Yeah. And we're definitely working on it and trying to make it happen. Now, will it work exactly as, hey, I have Spotify running and I have a YouTube video running and I have a game running, and can I control these different audio mixes all at once? Not necessarily, but there is going to be some options on better routing your audio. Yeah.
It takes a while because there's obviously, we kind of covered this with the microphone episode, with the first episode, is audio routing on a PC software. On the software side can be a little bit tricky because there's so many things that you have to incorporate into when you're trying to manipulate where your audio source is coming from. So it's that as well. Once we have that planned out and we release it out to the public, that will also be an experimentation phase for the end users as well, you guys, right? Because then you'll be able to do so many more things with it. So yeah, it's pretty tricky, but that's something that we're consistently working on, and we'll try to get it out to you when it's good and it's available, and I'll tweet it out everywhere. So make sure you follow us at XSplit on Twitter.
So if we can go to the next Twitter question. What are some tips and tricks when it comes to stream efficiency while using XSplit? So this is kind of a very general question where you're not quite sure what route you want to go, but generally speaking, you don't want to have programs that would interfere with XSplit's game capture. So I saw that there is a question also in chat about Afterburner and Gamecaster having some conflicts. So certain programs that also hook into the same, graphics libraries that we do are going to cause interference with our game captures. So you might not be able to actually see a game. You might get a black screen. It just might not work. It might crash XSplit. So that's some things that you want to do. You want to know what's running. So in that same note, maybe some antivirus software might, block some things XSplit can have access to. We try our best when we see conflicts from our users to reach out to the antivirus software provider or developer and say like, hey, can you whitelist us or make sure we don't have any conflicts. But if you do have that problem with your antivirus detecting something wrong with XSplit, let us know right away. XSplit.com support. Mono will be on it. Yep. He's got a laptop right here. Oh, yeah. We'll answer it right now. Mono, do you have any tips for efficiency?
You pretty much covered it all, I think. From that standpoint,
don't have a zillion windows open.
Yeah, don't have a lot of stuff opened up, and there's watch your installers, because sometimes by default certain softwares that get installed actually activate what is that called? It's kind of like a time capture. So when you install certain pieces of software, it automatically starts recording your screen once it's done, and it always keeps it in memory. So there's a couple pieces of software that do that, so you might want to check. I know NVIDIA does it now, right? When you install the newer set of drivers, there's a recording feature built into the drivers that I installed not too long ago and had it on, and then I didn't realize it, and I was wondering why things were a little bit different, but then I'd have to go in there and remove it from recording. So there's stuff like that that gets installed depending on the software that you're using. Other than that, stream efficiency, that's about it. Yeah, just watch what you have open. Try to keep everything to a minimum if you possibly can, and you have the resource monitor down at the bottom, so it's always a good thing to check to see where you're at.
And I guess one last thing, now this is just something that maybe both of us do, but just kind of a preference. Every so often, just kind of refresh your OS install,
Yeah, I do it like every 6 months. Because we do so many different things, like especially now with like testing stuff and running all these productions, and you have all these files going back and forth. It really puts a stress on the operating system after a certain amount of time. So what we usually wind up doing, if it's like a machine that's dedicated just to streaming, I'll usually wind up format and restore the operating system.
So I saw that Darth Greg 78 asks, is there a virtual green screen function? Is that true? So yes, there is. There's a couple different options with this. So the first option is going to be depending on the webcam you have. So for example, we have the C922 here, and let me see if it actually has an option available. Oh, it doesn't. Fortunately, I don't have it, but basically when you install the C922, it comes with this software package called Personify, and what that does is it does background removal. So if you don't have a green screen, it'll automatically kind of cut you out based on an algorithm. We also have partnered with a company called TriDef. So if you purchase their TriDef Smart Cam, I'll try and pull it up here on the computer screen. Just give me a sec. But if you have this TriDef software here, Smart Cam, you can see here, in fact, there's an XSplit version. So if you use this TriDef Smart Cam, when this is installed, basically when you go into XSplit and you add a camera, and you'll go into the color option for chroma key, or actually in this field right here, there'll be TriDef as an option. You can even see here, it gives you a little prompt that install the TriDef camera. But yeah, TriDef Smart Camera, you can buy a license for that, and you can use it as a virtual chroma key and do your own background replacement and stuff like that.
Or if you can try to have the same color background, doesn't necessarily have to be green, so you don't have the cloth to make a green screen. You can go into the chroma key and kind of define a particular color of your background and kind of remove it. So that has actually worked for me quite a lot of times. In like purple backgrounds, white backgrounds that are way behind me, I'll just put like maybe an extra lamp, a light lamp on it, so it brings out the color. That way I can chroma key it out. So
yeah. What is the best FPS to stream if 60 FPS is too hard?
30!
So yeah, 30 is probably the best to do it. If you kind of want to cheat and do like a visual effect, you can use weird FPSs like 42 or 45, and that kind of gives it the illusion of 60 FPS without needing so many resources. So that's one thing you can do right there. But I would recommend 30.
Yeah, generally 30 is good. Like everything looks really crisp when you're streaming. Sure, it's not like 60 frames per second smooth, but I mean visually it just looks great.
So do we have any other tweets? What's the best setting bitrate wise to run a 720p crisp stream on Twitch? I have a 1080 Ti 5820K.
Man, can I have your computer?
So
it's better than mine.
If you're gonna run a 720p stream on Twitch, so let's go ahead and set the frame rate to 60.
I don't even have a.
So you have tons of upload, right? So the one benefit you can get is you can pump more bitrate into a 720p stream to make it look better. So I think Twitch has set their hard limits on bitrate up higher. Now, having said that, I wouldn't go above 5,000 because you're at that threshold where most people can't watch a bitrate above that.
People still use DSL, man.
And then, so this is a bit difficult because I don't know if you're capturing the console or actually playing games on your same machine. I might assume that you are playing games, but what you can try and do is increase the encoder preset, right? Now, I wouldn't recommend going above faster, but you can see if running it at fast also chugs your machine while you're playing your games. But if you're capturing a gameplay console, I think you'll be all right by going up to fast.
Yeah.
It should be okay.
Because it's less resources that your machine has to deal with, right? And number one, it's an external source that you're just putting through a capture card. So if you're running, say, a game on your computer, obviously it's going to require more allocation of your resources, your GPU and your CPU to not only one display the content or run the game, but re-encode it and then push it out to your designated provider like Twitch or YouTube.
Yeah, and something we're actually going to talk about in future episodes is dual PC streaming setups. So that's where you have like one really good PC to play your game on, another PC that's maybe decent, but it's just used to encode everything.
Once most people get to that limit where they want the gameplay to be flawless, like especially in esports, you'll see a lot of people that have two PCs. Take like what's his name? I think Lyric has his own extra PC just for playing games. What's that guy's name?
Dr. Disrespect.
Dr. Disrespect. What's the guy he was fighting? Summit also. He has two PCs. One's for like his encoding machine. The other one's just for playing.
Most of the larger streamers have two PCs because they're rich.
Yeah. Damn. I wasn't gonna say it, but I was just trying to keep it more professional. But
professionally,
they'll wind up having two systems, one for streaming and one for playing, because most of the time they're really used to having a really optimal machine for their gameplay, and they don't want any hiccups, right? So it's okay if there's like a hiccup in the stream, as long as the game doesn't hiccup and they can get that sick headshot from like 3 miles away with like an 8x scope.
360 no scope.
Yeah. Right.
So we got a question from Lero Tayo. What is the difference between color and chroma key? So there's actually no difference, right? So basically chroma key is set to go between these three colors, which is red, green, blue, which is generally the most common colors. Now color key is like if you have this kind of weird like backdrop. So for example, let's say we wanted to get rid of this, then we can use the color key, and you basically have more control over what color you're removing. So chroma key and color key, same function, just color key is more flexible with different colors. Having said that, any other Twitter questions? The ultimate question: why should I use XSplit instead of OBS? So there is no benefit. It's really just what you're most comfortable with. So one thing that I can say that XSplit offers you is we offer you a lot more streamlined experience for broadcasting, right? So as you saw, we have the broadcast plugin that basically sets up your stream for you. If you're new to this, if you have no idea what bit rates are, frame rates, resolution, this takes care of the work and you can just start streaming. You don't need to worry about, hey, I've got to I gotta read 10 pages about what bitrate means, or I've got to try these different settings and spend all this time. You just start streaming. Also, besides that, so I know OBS has a very active support forum, but we actually have a fully fledged support team that works 24/7. Mono's in charge of them, so you kind of have the sense of you're working, with the company, with people that are there to help you and want to help you.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's all it's preference. That's it. I mean, each one has, I believe, their own benefits, and whatever you're more comfortable with. But
any other Twitter questions?
I think there was one up there.
Is there an optimal setup for new tech NDI streaming to a second machine for streams and to service?
Damn, advanced questions, man.
So I guess what this person's asking is, can I use NewTek's NDI output to send to a second machine to stream that machine out? So if you guys don't know, NewTek NDI is one of the newest features in XSplit. Basically, this is a protocol that works over a network, and XSplit kind of integrates this solution in both ways. So XSplit can both receive NDI signals and broadcast out NDI signals. So the best way to set this up is NDI takes a lot of bandwidth, especially if you're sending a 1080p 60 FPS signal. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're on a gigabit network. Just get like a gigabit switch or router. Make sure that all your machines are connected by that, and just use that to send your signals out. I would say for now, I would recommend kind of sticking with 720p 60. If you have really good machines, you can go higher, but I would say for safety's sake, stay around 720p 60. We are constantly working with new tech NDI to stay with the latest SDKs and make sure we update and use all the features that they use to improve the NDI service, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome as time goes on. Right now you can already do 720p 60 no problem, right? So yeah, use a gigabit network, and that's the best way you can optimize that.
Yeah, and it cuts out a lot of stuff for larger scale productions, which I've actually used myself for when I was doing Smash events, because we would have 2 to 3 streams going, and we would have a primary stream, and when there's ever downtime, say on your primary, you can bring in the NDI from the secondary or like the pool station and have that running while you're getting ready to have another match on the mainstream. So it's really useful, and it actually has been it's helped out so much over the course of time. You don't have to, that's less splitters, less cables, less tape, that's a lot of things. So it's very, very useful. Yeah, it's awesome.
So got to ask, why should I use legacy chroma key instead of color or chroma key? So just to kind of explain the mechanics behind it. So the chroma key that we have now is based on testing with our developers and kind of tweaking stuff. So as you can see that this chroma key has only 2 settings. Basically, it's kind of using a bit of logic to do chroma key. Legacy mode is kind of like the color key in a sense, where it gives you different colors that you can adjust things with and try it out. So basically, the reason why we included legacy mode is that some broadcasters found that they had better results using legacy mode because they had more control over the color that they were removing via chroma key. And this is mainly people that maybe don't have the best lighting for their chroma key. They have maybe just like a sheet, maybe has some ripples and some shadows. So kind of tweaking with the legacy chroma key gave them better results. But I would say as long as you have good lighting and a fairly smooth chroma key backdrop, the standard chroma key will probably give you the best results.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. It's like bad lighting and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely a great feature to be using. So you have multiple options for that. What else is in here?
So I'm not quite sure this question here. Okay, what is the best way to solve an audio problem where the audio output sounds like a noise record? That's
a noise record?
I guess distortion. So there's 2 things that could be doing this, right? So if you have an audio input, I don't know, it's kind of hard. Is the output on the stream or is the output into the thing? But basically, if you have audio coming in or even just audio going out, but if you have audio coming in that's way too hot, it starts to distort, and that's way when it goes out, it sounds like noise and tin. Or you might have like a buzz going on. That's usually like an electrical issue. So you need to make sure you might need like a power cleaner to hook up, or just make sure there's not like a ground loop or something going on there.
So it really depends on how your audio routing is, to be honest. So it's like we'd have to get down and figure out exactly how the audio routing is going on there to try to troubleshoot where that's at.
So in terms of extra encoding parameters, now this we could probably honestly, there's a whole manual.
The list is so big. It is very ridiculous how much you can do with this thing, but we don't really go into it because everything you pretty much need is already set in there, unless you know about parameters and all the switches that go along with that, and you can
if you
manipulate.
know like what B frames are and OpenGOP, and basically you're doing like the slightest tweaks of getting a certain image quality or pushing stuff out or maybe compressing stuff more.
It's like legacy chroma key for the encoder, where you want to pinpoint exactly what you want out of it.
And I mean, the best thing I can do is make sure you know the format. It's like EX I don't even. It's been a while, but basically, the thing about this is that you can set up these awesome encoding parameters that work great on your camera looking at you, right? But then when you go into gameplay, that has a different type of motion, and these parameters make it look like trash. So the thing is, it's not a universal thing. What you're gonna probably want to play with the most is using the encoding presets and finding which one works best for you. And really, at the end of the day, the only way you're gonna get better image quality is with more bitrate.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really interested in the parameters, there's a big wiki out there, just dedicated to that stuff. But it's very extensive, and you're gonna have to do a lot of homework.
Yeah. Anyway, do we have any more tweets, or is that it? Okay, that's it. So yeah, if you guys have any more questions in the channel, then we'll go ahead and try and answer those now.
Is there any more? If there's no more questions, remember we have a promo going on where you not only get 5, not 10, but 15% off your purchase of XSplit if you use the promo code behind the stream 0810. 15%, man.
15% discount. So that's with lifetime licenses, which are already on sale right now. That's for 3-year, 1 year, 3-month recurring, 15% off. Personal licenses, premium licenses.
Everything.
There's 15% off the free licenses, so it's 50% even more free.
It's 50% even more free. And make sure you follow us on all our social media. On Twitter at XSplit. And Facebook. What else? XSplit. I mean, Twitter, Facebook,
Twitter, Facebook, Player Me, Instagram, YouTube. Which, if you didn't know, if you go to our YouTube page, we actually have a tutorial series on videos on there that you can go check out as well. It explains a lot of stuff like green screening, how to put sources into your scenes and stuff like that. So we also have that material on our YouTube channel as well. So make sure you go give it a subscribe. So TX3017 asks, is there a more extensive audio equalizer than what's available in the mixer additional options? Unfortunately, no, there is not. No. Basically, all of our mixer option or our audio options are: do you want to make it louder? Do you want to make it quieter? And also, do you want to set a threshold if something is active or not? But basically, the only way you can really get these equalizer options is to have an outboard mixer that has an equalizer.
Yep.
And modify your audio that way. Basically, you're going to need to do the mixing of if you want echo or if you want to cut the mids, raise the highs. You need to do that outside before you send it into XSplit.
If you really want to get into the audio aspect of it, it's always better to use the audio console every time, because then you reduce the possibility of errors inside of operating system environment, right? So you can have so many factors that'll cause little issues here and there, but if you have an external hardware mixer with effects and all that stuff, it's usually the best way to go because you get the best audio out of it, and it's just easier to manipulate.
Yeah. So
like, say if we're talking and we start saying naughty words and the guys back there are going like, cut their stream off, he can just mute us right away. Right? Stuff like that, or change the bass, the treble, all that stuff. So audio console is always the best way to go.
So if there's any more questions in the chat, looks like that's mostly it. So yeah, guys, this is our second episode of Behind the Stream. This was a little bit more beginner focused about XSplit and how to set it up. The next episode we're gonna have is in 2 weeks, so we're trying to do the show bi-weekly.
Yep.
And we might have a special guest for some special surprises.
Maybe, we don't know. You have to wait and tune in. I kind of wish we had one of those moments where we just like, a cliffhanger or something like that. Like he's like right here, but no, you gotta wait till next week. But we're not pre-recorded and we're not scripted, so yeah.
Always live, always
live. Yeah. Which before we end this stream and I walk out of here and this gentleman approaches me prior to it going live, that was just a joke. Don't take it so personal, man.
So yeah, we're gonna be coming every 2 weeks.
Man, I love that guy.
And still same time, 12 p.m. Again, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook and Player and ask us questions. And like I said, the next episode will be a bit more of in-depth. So this one was more beginner stuff. That next one will be more advanced.
Yeah, so don't worry if we didn't cover a specific topic that you wanted to talk about or that you wanted us to discuss about. We'll eventually get there because the goal is to cover just basically everything that has to do with XSplit and production work and stuff like that. So we'll eventually gradually get to like really big steps. I'm looking forward to one episode in particular. They don't know what it is yet because I haven't told them, but that episode is going to be fun when we get to that part. So yeah, every 2 weeks, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Follow our socials, and yeah, if you ever want to ask us questions before the show starts, you can always tweet us and let us know what you want answered. And so we'll also tweet out the topic of the show, obviously, so you guys know what we're going to be talking about more or less. And then just let us know what you want answered, and we'll talk about it on the show. And then we'll take questions from the chat as well.
Anyway, my name is Luis.
I'm Armando.
And shout outs to Ed Wally, and see you later.
Peace.